Welcome to the Parade Room, the podcast for law enforcement professionals reflecting on what comes next. I'm your host, Jonathan, founder of the Parade Room. It's a private space for leavers building new identities, businesses, and leadership paths after service. Today, we are doing something very different. This week, we are fortunate to welcome a very well-respected expert on mental health, Dr. Tara Quinn. Dr. Tara Quinn, you are very welcome.
For having me. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you here. So you gave me, like others do, your introduction, and I've tried to distill it, and I've done this, and hopefully I make a fair shot at it. And let me start with this. It's almost like I need more fingers. Specialist advisor for the Care Quality Commission, clinical reviewer for NHS England, and a volunteer for the British Red Cross. An accomplished broadcaster and host of the Adversity Psychologist podcast. You've recently co-authored this fantastic book, Health Microgains, a registered psychologist, associate fellow of the British Psychological Society, founder and director of the Conversation Starter Project, which is community interest project, and Human Animal Welfare Alliance. And with 20 plus years of experience in NHS and your private practice, you have found the time to come and speak to me.
I have.
I needed more than one breath. That is masses.
Sounds a lot when you hear it in one go.
The time to do all of that.
I don't know. Some of it is just, it's not all the time. So some bits I dip in and out of, I guess. And it's all fluid. So it's all psychology. It's all bringing information to people and just different platforms.
Well, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you very much indeed. I want to start with the book, Mental Health Microgains. I read it, and it feels like that book that everyone needs to carry with them and use as a bit of a reference tool. Feeling a bit rubbish.
Thank you.
Have a quick through.
It's designed as a pick up, put down. You don't have to start anywhere particular, which we all need. So
tell us the story. How did you get to writing this?
So I'm a big advocate for preventative. I'm going to use the word mental health, but we're going to come on to that later on about terms. Preventative well-being, preventative mental health. A lot of people wait until they don't feel well, they don't notice something, and that could be in their mind and their body. And the problem with that is we keep perpetuating this quick fix society, quick fix model of mental health. Microgains came from an idea from the publisher and myself and my co-author of how can we bring our together 40 years plus experience as psychologists of things that you can do little and often every day with the idea that it's preventative well-being, that we're building up our resilience, building up our kind of metaphorical toolkit of things we can do to look after our mind and our body, because there's a huge link between the two. But it's also something that if you do particularly notice that you're struggling, you can also pick up and use. But the whole premise is preventative stuff. It's work on this stuff, do it little and often, and it becomes habitual, and therefore part of your routine without even thinking about it. But it is it's intellectual theft, but we like to call it research. So it is actually based on marginal gains theory, which is a well-known sports theory. So sports psychologists use it, British cycling particularly, and British athletics, where basically you can make tiny little changes in just a few key areas, but they can actually create a bigger overall change in your mental health as well. So that's what the idea of a micro gain is. Tiny thing, do it little and often. They're all things you can do in 5 minutes, make a bigger overall change on your mental health. So we're going to see whether, does it work? You can let me know if you're trying stuff.
Well, I'm going to tell you what my favourite ones are in there in a minute.
These are the ones I wrote. Some are Emma's and some are mine.
Well, the first thing I wanted to ask though about this is, which is your favourite?
Do you know? So I am. If you look on other podcasts where I've talked about a book, I am the queen of cheese. So mine is the putting off something you've been thinking about doing. It's the value-based living stuff, and also dancing around your kitchen. So the stuff that I like the stuff we don't tend to think of as being good for our mental health. So that's mine. Put the radio on, put your favourite music on, and move your body. Never fails to work. And put off stuff. How many of us say, I really want to do this, I've always wanted to take up that, or I must get back to that. Do it. I've been doing that a lot this last year, so those are my two faves. I've snuck in two rather than one.
No, good. Yeah, no, please sneak in two. Yeah, you're right. Action seems to stop the mind from wandering, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And the dancing is great. My two, breathing, I love. One is very important, of course. But I remember doing some bits overseas, and I was just teaching people how to relax through breathing.
Yeah.
Everyone thought it was absolutely bonkers. They're like, oh, I know how to breathe.
Yeah.
I'm like, but do you really know how to breathe?
Absolutely.
And for me, breathing is a really, really key one, because you can really slow things down, or you can speed things
Yeah.
up. But in those moments, learn to sort of just calm everything down. And dancing. Now, I'm a proper no dad dancing type of guy, right? But in my own place, I'm the best dancer.
And that's how it
And,
should be.
having seen some trauma therapies where they include dancing,
Yeah.
where there's zero judgment, honestly, it's just
It is.
liberating. It
Absolutely.
feels, you're like the gazelle that survived the lion attack, and you're having a little shake and everything feels
And we know
wonderful.
there's a lot of, so everything is underpinned by science in that book. So sometimes things like breathing, dance around your kitchen, sometimes, we're going to use that word, some people will think it's a little bit woo-woo. So therefore they won't do it. And particularly if it's all right to bring in men. So that book is predominantly done, even the cover, everything around trying to get men to think about mental health as well. And some of these concepts, mindfulness, breathing, automatically, we know men are more likely to detach from those terms and therefore not maybe explore how they could be helpful. But we know the science is so simple. It's why we don't have to overthink mental health. Moving your body, so dancing, walking, whatever it is, regulating your breathing, we know it works to regulate your emotions, lower your blood pressure. The benefits are there and they're quite instant, which is what will get us to keep doing it. So it's kind of moving away from that metaphor, these things are woo-woo, or, mindfulness is sitting and meditating for 2 hours. It isn't. It's just about present moment awareness. And if you don't know what you're experiencing, therefore, you're not in a position to judge what you need to do. So often we
Are
stagnate.
we in a really tricky place, because prevention isn't sexy, exciting,
Exactly,
is it?
that's the problem.
Whereas
Yeah.
taking the pill or the quick fix, whatever, is going to sell.
If you go on Instagram right now, most of the things you see in the mental health space, but even those adverts now that pop up, are all quick fix. So there are some brilliant apps out there, don't get me wrong, there's some wonderful things you can do in the moment that technically could be seen as quick fix, but it's still perpetuating this idea that anxiety needs to go. We need to get rid of depression. And I always say to people, I'm the biggest letdown as a psychologist. You come to my clinic, that's where we're kind of filming now. It's about making room for this stuff, and the quick fix is perpetuating this. Have to get rid of it in order to be able to live, to be happy, to get to somewhere okay. And we're never going to get there. If we didn't have anxiety as human beings, we wouldn't survive as a species. And that's always the first thing I say when someone comes through my door. And it probably is a bit like, why are you mentioning this? But if you can try and normalise, if it's all right to use that word, that we are human and we experience adverse events. We're not saying it's nice, but changing your relationship with your experiences can actually be the best kind of intervention. But quite often it involves doing work around understanding it, work around building up tools and things to help mean that it's not so impactful. And you're absolutely right, that's the stuff that's not Instagram friendly, it's not sexy, it's not quick fix, it's not sparkly, as I call it. So this book is designed to try and go, actually, if we can help people understand a bit more about their own, we call it a formulation in psychology. So why is it that my brain responds this way to this thing? Why is it that my body might be feeling this way? You're in a much better position to go, okay, this is a thing, this does happen, it happens to all humans on some level. Maybe then I can try and see what happens if I try X, Y, or Z right now. Or if I can get up every day and try a few of these things, maybe it won't be so intense when it shows up next time, if that makes sense. So it's the biggest thing people could take away today is, let's try and move away from quick fix. It doesn't work. It works short term. Let's try and move towards preventative. Putting the time in.
It's like compound interest, isn't it?
Look at all the diet industry at the moment. So people were getting to a point in my clinics, a lot of the models I use are really, really good for people with overeating, emotional eating, those kind of issues. Then as Ozempic comes along and it's quick fix, so people are gravitating. And then now what are we seeing now? Questions about that, but it just kind of shows you, doesn't it, that people gravitate towards quick fixes, but then who do we see coming back in clinic year after year? The people where that stuff hasn't worked. Sometimes it's even detrimental. So it is hard because, if you go on a holiday, you are going to be attracted towards the quick fix, getting your swimsuit, aren't you, or whatever. But if there's a way of not going to the gym, we are more, if we're kind to ourselves, we're more likely to want to go and have a nosy at that stuff. So we're not being unrealistic, but just being aware of how often
Yeah,
we're drawn
right.
towards that stuff.
I think it's like the Buddhists say that, suffering is just a part of life, isn't it?
And you can still do value-based living even with suffering. Obviously, there's different
Yeah.
degrees of suffering, but sometimes we are almost pushed towards the wait till it's gone, and then if I can just deal with this thing, if I can just pay the mortgage off, then we'll do this. Or if I can just do this, I will be happy. And it quite often doesn't happen. We're missing out on this
Yeah,
wonderful
absolutely
thing
right.
that is life and health. And as I sit here now, I'm healthy, my body works well. What can I do with that? Or I can be hooking with some stuff that my brain might say, we need to deal with this before we can go and do our life. Well, how long might that be?
Do you know, in policing terms, quite a lot of people are, let's say, stuck in a bit of a pension trap where they
Yeah,
will wait for 30, 35 years, or when I retire, I will travel, or when I get to
exactly.
35 years, I get my pension and I'll do this. Years ago, I know when my dad finished, people were routinely having heart attacks within 7 years. And then just sort of not completely disabling, but they were unable to travel.
Yeah.
It's different now, but still there's some people still with that mindset. Oh, I'm going to pay the mortgage off, and by the time I'm 58, my partner would also retired. Therefore, we can go and travel the world. Like, okay, what are you doing now? Oh, I'm in a job I hate, but it's paying the mortgage off.
And what's
We
your
need to take
body
some
doing as a
sacrifices.
result of all of that stress? Maybe lack of
Which
hope.
comes back to values. You mentioned there about values-based living.
Absolutely.
I'm a big
Me
fan
in
of
a nutshell.
values.
Me too.
So, can you tell us more about that from
So the
your side?
best
How
way I
you
try
see?
and describe it, so when I have my dear clients that come into my clinic, is I'm a generation that kind of grew up in the 80s, and at school it was very goal, goal, goals. You get this, you get your GCSEs, you go to school, you buy a house, you get a mortgage. It's all tangible, tick boxy stuff, right? No one ever introduced to me the concept of values until I trained in a certain type of therapy. So I do a lot of acceptance and commitment therapy. It's a values-based therapy. I like to think of values as a layer underneath your goals. So it's good to have goals. It's good to have things to work towards. But the problem is, as human beings, and when we look at human motivation, when we don't reach our goals, quite often we'll get deflated. So my always favourite example is in January, pre-pandemic, you used to get the join the gym adverts, right? And then by March, you get in the text, we haven't seen you in a while. Or I will be honest, I've had a few times over the years where I've got there and even the code on the doors changed because it's been that long, right? So it's really shaming. So you don't just in the moment go, oh, darn, I haven't been. You tend to snowball, don't you? So then you'll be going, right, I never finish anything. This has happened before, because it usually has. I never finish. So you get the deflated. So that goal makes you think I'm a worthless person. I don't value my health or whatever. Actually, it's not about that. You've just got the wrong thing for your motivation, if that makes sense. It took me 47 years on this planet to realize I don't like exercising with human beings, which is why I never went to gyms properly. And then I started doing a well-known app, changed my life, changed my relationship with my body and exercise, because I fit. My value was around the health and my strength and certain things I wanted to work on, just in the wrong place. So that's always a really good example to me, that your values is the who, what, when that's really important to you. So you might value your body, your health. You might have a value about being able to move around and chase after your kids or whatever, or walk your dogs or climb mountains like you do. But the goal then might come from that. So I really value, you call it climbing mountains or exploring, whatever you refer to that as. But then you might have goals which will help you get there. So I've got to train a certain way, eat a certain way, whatever it is that you need. So those two things together, I think, are really important. And when we have really kind of sticky moments when we're stuck or we're not attaining things that we need to, coming back to your values. So if you're really in a job that you hate and know that's impacting my stress levels, it's impacting maybe my mood outlook, relationships even, you're able to kind of come back to your values and go, what do I value actually? Because I think I've got really stuck on the goal of being able to pay this darn mortgage off or whatever, but actually helicoptering out of it and going, I value being respected at work. I don't value this toxic environment. I value my relationship more than how I'm treated at work for this mortgage that I'm trying to. Does that? And sometimes it can help you make more informed decisions. So then it might help you to go, right, what can I do with this work situation? Because we get very stuck and very focused. And values to me are about what we want for ourselves, how we want to be treated. Sometimes we have competing values, but it's always worth a conversation with yourself around, right, my value around looking after my family maybe and getting this mortgage paying off is actually dominating over my values of my own health and stress at work. my values around what I want to be doing with my days. I want to sit at a desk 9 to 5 doing something that really doesn't tick any boxes for me. It's impacting my relationship when I get home because I'm burnt out and disinterested. Does that make sense? So value-based stuff, I think, is quite, and I've seen it with clients I work with in clinic, it can be life-changing. But when you're stuck going, I'm just perpetually chasing these goals on this treadmill, this hamster wheel, to helicopter out and go, what a bit like let's go traveling and not wait. What could that look like? It can be quite, the book is very values based, so it gives you more kind of examples of what do I want here. But I won't say his name, but the app that I used to exercise with, that was life changing for me because my health improved, my strength, my whole body shapes changed because I found the right thing. And yes, it took a while, but that's a really good example to me of where your values are there. But the defeatist thinking can come in going, I'm just not going to the gym, I'm not doing this right, I'm lazy, I'm this, I don't stick at things. And everyone, I'm sure, will have some situation in life where that will resonate. So I'm a
Like 100% they
values-driven
will.
person, it matters. If it matters, I will do it. So it's why I do a lot of philanthropic work, or I will do things for people sometimes even when I might not have capacity, because quite often the value behind it is what I can do for people and can change things for people.
I mean, I'm 100% in agreement with you, and I still do coaching for people. And one of the early sort of sessions is about values and asking that question, what are your values? And I remember having that question asked of me 8 years ago. And I was like, do you know what? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in the police, say, you are living and breathing the organizational values.
Yeah.
Integrity, professionalism, compassion, courage. Okay, great. But who are you? What's your inner core compass saying? Because your inner core compass could not conflict with those, but you might be doing stuff that just conflicts. Absolutely. And you feel it and you're like, oh, I'm sacrificing my time with my family to go and do something I don't like.
Absolutely.
A job or a particular job within the police, for example.
Saying yes to stuff that might be an extra hour here and there or pushing you over the limit. It's that kind of stuff as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And what about prioritization of values? I quite like this. Your number one value is the golden thread that runs through the others. Are you a fan of that, or are you about?
I like visual, so coming up with a metaphor that works for you. So I use something called the bullseye. So we've all done archery or darts or something where you've got a target, and we tend to think of values in different areas, and that's how you can better spot whether they're competing. So you can kind of have core values like mission statements, as you say. So I worked in the NHS for many years. I've worked for other organisations where here are our values, but they're quite generic. We kind of tend to think about, what are your values about work? What are your values about you as an individual and your kind of personal growth, I guess, development? What are your values in relationships? And that can be anything from peer, managerial to romantic, family, everything in between. What are your kind of self-development in terms of maybe work, courses, that kind of stuff? And then just your hobbies and interests. What do I want to do with my time? What's fun? What do I want to do more of? And then that sometimes helps you, rather than just having these generic, I value trust, integrity, and they might span all of those things. You might go, actually, my trust in my relationship is being impacted because I'm hiding how much work I'm doing at night when my partner's in bed and I'm staying up late and then I'm getting tired. That's one kind of example. Or I'm finding now that actually I'm moving away from the person I want to be as a partner or a spouse because I'm so overwhelmed with anxiety, stress, heading towards burnout because my work is dominating. So I've actually then lost sight of my values around why I do my job. So things like compassion fatigue, creeping in, vicarious trauma, that kind of stuff. So I like to think, so the bullseye is a lovely one, but also you mentioned compass. So we also do a visual, and that can be quite nice because you can have a reference line as well. So kind of thinking of, if you were to have a compass that guided you driving, we use a bus metaphor sometimes. You're driving your bus towards what really matters. That's all the things that are important to you. But who's on your bus that sometimes taps you on the shoulder and says, pay attention? And it could be anxiety, low mood, stress, whatever. Think of your compass as all the things that are important to you. So that might be your general values around kind of trust, autonomy, wellness, health, those more generic things. And then what are your values in key areas? That can be good to think about, because sometimes you might have your family competing with this great promotion at work, which means later nights for 6 months. But then, okay, I really value my autonomy, but I also value my relationship and our trust and my partner's autonomy. So let's sit down and tell them, right, I've been offered this, but it's going to mean this. What do you reckon? Does that make sense? So kind of maybe sometimes thinking about it across different areas and what might be impacted is sometimes a little bit easier to hold than more generic concepts.
And you can feel if there's a conflict.
Yeah, that kind of dissonance, that push me, pull you, tug of war metaphor sometimes I use. And sometimes actually we can get so caught up in the tug of war that what we really need to do is drop the rope and kind of go, look what's happening. And we don't often do that because we're in it, often in fight or flight mode, going, oh my gosh, it's relationship versus work. Or I really value my job, but I've got offered this promotion. If I don't go for it, they're going to think this about me. But I might be quite happy with where I am. That's quite a common thing that comes up with people I work with. But we get so caught up in the kind of adrenaline fueled, oh my gosh, what do I do? I've got all this stress, that we don't often helicopter out and go, what is the situation? So therefore, what are the options? We tend to be a little bit more quick fix, solution focused, get rid of it, because it's intolerable for most of us to sit with, isn't it? So quite a lot of that preventative stuff is learning how to go, hang on a minute, what is happening here? And not all of us are great at doing that, are we?
Absolutely not. It feels a bit like sometimes we can hold on to that barbed wire a little bit too long, and actually we don't. We know we need to let it go, but we don't, despite the pain it's really causing us.
And being really kind over that too, because part of that is just unfortunately how our kind of threat brain works. So again, when you're doing preventative work, if you've done a really good job as a psychologist, you are helping people to understand this is how our brains work when they're under threat, when they're under duress. So this isn't you not being good and not letting go. That's a reaction, but we can understand it more and therefore catch it and kind of go, hang on one moment. What options have I got here? What would happen if I did just take one hand off and just look at this? Okay, how's that feel? Because sometimes it could be scary doing something different, can't it? We get in our little ways, have our modes of being because it's safe, and brain goes, oh, we love safe. Let's keep doing this. And it's why often we'll keep doing the same behaviours, have the same responses. And it can take, you almost sometimes need a safe space. It's why some people do come to therapy, to be able to start to explore this stuff, to then look at creating longer term change.
But then what you're doing with your work in clinic or with your book and just the preventative approach is stopping the person grabbing the wrong piece of barbed wire in the future and getting them to think, do I really want to? What is the impact of that? I remember what happened last time and what I went through. Let me use those skills to not even take hold of it.
And if you find on that occasion, and we all do, we're humans, right? And I always say you'll find more and more these days psychologists sharing a little bit more of their personal experiences for those of us that are in more of a kind of a public sphere, because sometimes we can look like these all singing, all dancing. We never do anything because we've got all the tools. We do it too. Humans, sometimes we get stuff wrong. Sometimes we respond. Sometimes that threat brain is so strong that we might end up grabbing the barbed wire. It's about noticing that we have and going, isn't that interesting? I've gone back to that thing I've done before. Is it just one time? Okay, right. I got a bit hooked then. But if you're noticing that's happening more and more, gosh, it's been a few weeks now and I'm still doing that thing again. Right. What do I need to do here? Does that make sense? So it's I do a lot of self-compassion based work as well, not beating ourselves up when we go back to old patterns or we do stuff that might not be the best choice. But we do what we can sometimes because we are humans, and that's what makes us wonderfully interesting, but also can be a bit of a pain. Absolutely. Can't it?
So this podcast is for, well, we'll probably release this so many more people can see it, but for policing or the police family, okay? Now they're going to pick up primary, secondary traumas. They just seem to hoover them up.
Yeah.
Same in the health sector.
Absolutely. Any helping profession, it's hidden. I do a lot of animal welfare work, so I support people in running animal rescues, and it's everywhere where you are basically experiencing other people's distress.
And I you see people's figures saying, a police officer, for example, would see X number of traumas in their life, and a normal person would see 5. I don't know where these figures come from and if they're accurate or not, but I think there's a number of industries, like you say, the helping services who are going to experience all these. And I remember as a young police officer, you went to something that was serious. The go-to was, let's go to the pub and let's have a drink. Let's go and have alcohol because that's going to sort it out. Now, I think we've moved away from that a little bit, but there's still that cloud of, well, in my day, we would have just gone to the pub and we would have got drunk. That would have fixed it. You lot are all namby-pambies.
You've got almost like a divide where you might have a different generation saying, oh, we're doing something different.
Now, does it help?
Interesting question. So I thought about this. I'm going to bring in compassion first. So sometimes we do what we can with what we have available to us. So I am a generation, when I first started working in the NHS, we'd go for a drink at the end of the week. And that's what we would do. And we were all psychologists, speech and language therapists. Whereas nowadays, that's very, very different. So, but at the time, that's what we did, because we know, let's be super kind, alcohol is a disinhibitor, it's a relaxant. So for some people, it can actually help you to decompress from the day. It's probably not the most healthy thing to do, but let's be realistic. Most people will have a drink and it makes them relax. And sometimes what it can do is allow you to talk a little bit more freely. The difficult thing with that is for some people it can actually trigger memory. So if you're in a profession, especially like the police, where maybe you've got something a little bit deeper that you're holding or you're not doing so well, it can actually be detrimental. So it's the kind of being kind bit I wanted to get across. But at the same time is how can we start to, dare I say it again, normalise conversations, and where and when we do it, that we don't, there's something about that out of work. It is nice to decompress outside of work where you maybe don't have to think too much about what you say and what you do. But at the same time, to me, it still fuels that idea of this stuff. We have to hold on to it until we're out of work. So is the agency taking responsibility for how, when people are talking through stuff, that they're normalising debriefing after incidents, not waiting till the end of the week in the pub or whatever. So that kind of newer thinking around preventative, are they supporting people to know what's the stuff you might want to look out for that means you're not doing so well in your mind or your body? So how do people even talk about compassion, fatigue, vicarious trauma? Do they know what it is? Do they know how it shows up? And therefore, is there a space to do that? What does it look like for people? Is it a quick chat, or you still do get in a lot of cultures, "Oh, just come and talk to me if you need anything," but it's a more of a throwaway comment. So I guess the thing I struggle with is I don't like rote learnt tick box. We've offered it, tick box. It's the difference between, have you ever had a friend and you wanted to go, "How are you?" and you're not looking at them, you're not holding space to wait for them to go, "Actually, I'm not doing okay." We're on the school path. "Hi, how you doing? Nice to see you. How are you?" But you've already walked away or your head's already turned. It's that. Does that make sense? That's my kind of bugbear, that we need to be present, wait for a response. And that's what we need to do in organisations. So in something like the police, what does that look like? What does the space look like? How safe or psychologically safe do you feel to go, "Actually, I'm not okay, and this is what I'm noticing"?
And I think what you just described there, of that quick transactional "hi, how are
I call
you?"
it the
happens
school
like
path metaphor. We all do it. I've done it. It's
yeah.
powerful.
You might even look back. "Yeah, I'm all right. How are you?" "Yeah, I'm good. Okay, speak to you soon."
I'm good. It's a very British thing, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. People put that in WhatsApp messages. I immediately reply with, "Well, what's happened?"
The only word worse than good to reply is "I'm
Yeah,
fine,"
which makes me go,
which means none of us are
"No,
fine.
you're not." But it's, yeah, so it's the difference between genuine holding space for people, normalising conversations, trying to reduce stigma. It's not something we hold on to and have to kind of whisper at someone in the pub. It's not anything that can, there is a jovial element, isn't there, to going to the pub? I like a drink, I like to go out and socialise, but sometimes what it can do is mean that things get minimised a bit. And also, again, if we're thinking of alcohol as a kind of a disinhibitor as well, you might be more likely to have that generational divide of, "Oh, for goodness sake, you're still talking about that," or, "Oh, we're in the pub now, why are we talking about work?" Do you see what I mean? So sometimes it kind of deactivates those frontal lobes that make us less likely to think through what we're going to say.
Is there, and I'm going to be very careful with my words, but also probably won't be, is there a danger of associating, "Oh, I've been through a traumatic incident. Oh, in the past, we went to the pub and had a drink." Is there a danger that we create some sort of pathway in our brain which is traumatic, therefore must drink?
Well, when we look at kind of how we cope, most people don't want to sit with distress, whether that's psychological, visceral, physical. So if you've had trauma, for example, and you've got physiological things going on, most of us don't go, "Oh, this is nice, let's sit with this." We tend to move away from it in whatever way we can. Alcohol, substances is just part of that sphere as I see it, because they're quite quick fix, aren't they? When you have alcohol, your muscles relax. For most people, they do notice sometimes that it just dulls or numbs the thoughts. Not everyone, for some people actually it can have the exact opposite effect and quite immediate, but it's kind of moving away from that idea that actually quite easy we can get kind of habits. That's a quick fix if I do this, but it's also can be really hidden. So one of the things I find is we tend to talk about alcohol and substances because they're the more shamey things that people would do. But I see a lot of people that will crank that treadmill up to literally sprint level, and that looks super healthy. You're in the gym 4 or 5 times a week, but actually it's no different in terms of the numbing effect, because I'm so exhausted and my heart rate's so high, I can't really think about these anxious thoughts, or I'm not really paying attention to what was there before in my body. No different than alcohol. So it's just looking, it can be really hidden. We will cope, we will use like kind of safety behaviors or coping mechanisms, but they're not always obvious. So sugar, a lot of people will overeat, eat certain foods as a way of coping. That can be a little bit more obvious, but it's still something that can be quite secretive if you're living with other people. Alcohol's a little bit more overt. So it's just kind of looking at what's your go-to, and also being really kind with it, that we will do stuff to try and alleviate symptoms. And it really is as simple as that. But sadly, some of the things that we do, they can be problematic because there can be effects that come from doing that. But it's being kind and noticing. Often we might not notice. And post-pandemic, what we do know, the kind of way we used to view kind of relationship with alcohol has really shifted, because a lot of people were drinking quite consistently, but at lower rates through the pandemic. And actually what we have now is a lot more people kind of with functional, unhealthy alcohol use, if that makes sense. You're still in jobs, you're still holding families together, but your alcohol use is excessive and it's numbing. It's numbing physiological stuff, thoughts, but it's a little bit more hidden. So that's something hopefully people can take away today, is just keep an eye on your habits, what your go-to response is when you notice something intolerable, and what you want to do with that. It's not always immediately obvious, so being really compassionate, but it's not something to just stop. Sometimes we need help. Sometimes we need to talk about it with someone else.
So if alcohol is one of those things that people would go to, others would be...
So over-exercising has become a really big issue post-pandemic, particularly because people were using exercise as a way of just filling time, and we had all these wonderful online resources that blew up, significant people that were on the telly, for example. So all this wonderful stuff with exercise, but actually exercise can be overused to cope with intolerable feelings. And it can be quite addictive as well if it's not managed in a certain way. So that's one of the things I tend to see more of in clinic, is people kind of, I'm going to use the word misusing exercise. So they're using it predominantly to cope with intolerable feelings, but then they're getting a dopamine hit and all of the wonderful feel-good chemicals from the actual exercise. And then you've got this perfect storm. So it's kind of alcohol, but also sugar as well. People overeating. So kind of that, when things are intolerable, almost like metaphorically, we want to push them away. And by eating, sometimes the physical feeling of being full actually kind of feels like you're pushing emotions down. So relationship with food is always an interesting one to look at. Overeating, but also restrictive as well. Exercise.
How about things like sex?
Some people can, yes. So when you think of, so in terms of online access to things as well, there's been a massive increase in addiction to pornography post-pandemic, but also online gambling and gaming as well. And I've seen a lot of that in my clinics, and I only have a small clinic in a small West Sussex town. The gambling particularly, I've had online kind of addiction to porn sites, but also the online gambling and gaming. So the things that are not even legally gambling websites, but games where you're paying, but you're also winning, because there's kind of a feedback loop there. It's almost a different podcast for a different day, but when we kind of look at the dopamine hit that you get from that stuff and then needing more and more of it, but it leading to higher rates of anxiety, lowered mood, because there's often disconnection and other things that come from using those kind of platforms. So it's kind of, I guess it's looking for hidden stuff. So if there's somebody listening to this, what I would like people to take away from it is that it's not always really obvious the ways that we are coping. So the behaviours that we might be doing, I'm going to use the word unhealthy rather than things we should or shouldn't do, because that kind of removes the shaming element, is that we would do things to cope, but we might not immediately realise, gosh, I'm doing that and it's not so good for me, or it's causing these other issues, but I think I'm doing it to cope with this intolerable stuff, rather than it's something enjoyable, or I'm working on a particular exercise program for muscle strength, or doing an Ironman or something. So I guess the other thing as well is, so if you've got partners of people listening to this as well, is that sometimes you might be able to spot this behaviour easily in someone else than they can themselves. So we know our partners, right? We know our friends. Sometimes we can spot when their habits are different. That's the kind of stuff sometimes that can just, and if you can, just start that gentle, compassionate conversation, kind of saying, oh, I've just noticed, how are you doing? Keeping an eye on stuff. It's sometimes difficult conversations, but it can sometimes be really helpful to have someone else bring that up for you, because it might be something you're struggling with initiating conversation
It
around.
is a difficult conversation to have, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because quite often there's a lot of guilt and shame associated with some of the ways that we cope with our emotions. And that can build up as well and make it harder to reach out and say, especially in men as well. In terms of, we know that men are less likely to reach out generally to talk about their feelings and mental health. But if you know that there's already a kind of a behavioural loop there with things that you are using or doing to cope with intense emotions or intense thoughts or a particular condition that you have, you're less likely as a man to reach out and talk to people about it. So things like this is why I say yes, and it's just because it can sometimes mean that one person listening goes, I think that is me, or I think that's my friend or my colleague even. And I wonder whether it's worth just checking in with them or just keeping an eye on it if you're not sure. Just, sometimes we'll notice more and more things when we start to make some links. So that could come from today, hopefully.
Yes, you've given some really good indicators there for people to be aware of, and there'd probably be some people listening and go, oh yeah, I have to do that tick, that tick, that tick. But they will potentially then say, but it's not bad enough.
How do we
how do you then tick?
How do we, and again, for me, I kind of look at what does it mean for your value-based living. Sometimes obviously we be really clear about risk. So if you're doing behaviors that are risky, there's anything there around suicidality, gambling to the point where financially you're putting yourself or others at risk, that is one thing. But also just for you as an everyday person going, actually, is my relationship with food now problematic? How is it impacting your day-to-day living? Is it impacting your relationships to the point where you think, there may be risk? Is it impacting your finances, your ability to work? So it's kind of looking at chronicity across different areas. So for some people as well, they might have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, but they're holding down a job and their relationships are okay. But you might want to look at it in terms of, okay, right, those things are okay. But if I carried on at the intensity I am, frequency I am, what can that mean? What does this mean for my body? Again, we call it, and again, it sounds a bit woo-woo, but having compassionate conversations, because sometimes even thinking about it with yourself, it can be quite shaming, and we just go, I can't, so we tend to move away. It's why most of us don't like to press pause. It's why some people struggle with mindfulness, because when we stop, that's when our brain goes, here's all the things you're doing, here's all the thoughts that we don't like, here's all those big feelings and body symptoms. So if we can just have very gentle, oh, that's interesting, I tend to do that when I do this. Oh, that's interesting. So that kind of language can help you just begin that journey to go, I don't think this is okay. And reaching out. So first port of call, talk to someone trusted. Go and see your GP. It's often that very first step that's the hardest.
So it's approaching it with compassion and kindness. And I was listening to what you were saying, and we rarely call ourselves into a one-to-one meeting, do we, to have a little chat with ourselves about.
That's why we busy ourselves, because we often know when we have gut instinct, right? I don't think people rely on it enough. So it's why we tend to busy ourselves. We could flop in front of Netflix and go, I really want to see that new series. But for a lot of us, we know that if we stop, that's when we get that feeling or those thoughts. So then we'll just busy ourselves. So that's always the first indicator. I would say, trust your gut instinct. You know when something's not up. And when something's up, and we know when something may be starting to impact our day-to-day functioning. It's just allowing a bit of compassion to go, it's really hard to name it. And it's really hard then to reach out and do something about it, isn't it? So, I call it being an open, and I call it being a curious observer. So just observe in a really, unless it's an immediately risky thing. So, if you are struggling with thoughts of harming yourself or others, that's very, very different. But if you are noticing, just being a curious observer, let me just see what could happen if I pay a bit more attention to what I'm doing here. So moving the quick fix away for the moment, or the problem solving, and just seeing whether you can just sit and observe.
And this will sound woo-woo as well. It is actually about just being present and noticing more about yourself rather than the existential that everyone's rushing to sort out.
And being kind with yourself, that it takes a while to get good at noticing stuff for yourself, because coming back to that, we busy ourselves, we don't like stopping. So where we do, we go, oh, I don't like it. And that's where some of the stuff, like you mentioned, just really simple, whatever happens in life, you've always got control of your breathing. And I always say that on so many podcasts, just a really simple breathing exercise. It doesn't have to be these massive glamorous apps and big long mindfulness sessions, to just help you to, even if you can just spend a minute or two. It probably sounds really ridiculous, but we're not talking about having to sit for half an hour and come up with a big plan of what you're noticing. It's just, can I just pause even for 1 or 2 minutes? Just notice. And I had somebody this morning in clinic, people don't mind me using examples, just see if you can notice 3 things about yourself. And that could be, I'm hungry, I'm tired, and my shoulder aches from going to the gym or whatever. Does that make sense? It doesn't have to be straight away, let me deal with that big thing from the past, that depression that I know is there. Just getting your relationship with your body into a different place in your mind. So, oh, there's a thought about that. Okay. So it's very small. That's what the book's around. It's that small microgains. And that's the stuff that sometimes can reduce the scary bit. I've got to sit with stuff that we kind of know is there, don't we?
You talk about the body scans in the book, don't you?
Yeah. They're really simple ones as well.
Very relaxing, aren't they, to sit there, eyes shut, doing some breathing. And let's not make it complicated. It's just breathing, right? Yeah. And sitting with it and just learning to scan, my head, my shoulders, like you say, a bit of shoulder pain, and just scan through the body. It's very relaxing. And I remember someone saying to me, if you do that before you sleep at night,
it's the best thing to do, yeah.
It's simple but effective.
And if it is a little bit scary, if you do know, I mean, some people may already know, if you've got a trauma history or you've got a certain condition, if you know that it's hard to sit and notice and think about what you're experiencing, just go with the, can I notice something physical in my body, an ache, a pain? Can I notice, and ask yourself, am I hungry or not? So just start with some of what I call the kind of safer noticing. Am I hot or cold? How would I describe my temperature? How does it feel to be sat on this chair? So really basic things. How does it feel if I just push the soles of my feet into the floor? Oh, that's interesting. I can feel a pull on my calf. So you're just learning to sit with yourself, but putting a little bubble on what you're noticing to begin with. So just really tiny. That's what our book, little tiny steps. So when you get better at that, and that becomes more habitual, so we'd get you to do that a couple of times a day, regular check-in points, so then you don't have to overly think about it. Then you might be able to go, okay, right, let me just see whether I can pull out just one thought. Is there one thought there? How does that feel? You might be able to do 2. Can I just see, how does my heart rate feel at the moment? Okay, right, have I got tension? So just start with the stuff that's less scary. It's a bit like graded exposure in a way. We just start off with the more tolerable and build up and be kind. No one expects anyone to just suddenly sit there and go, right, tell me everything. It would be unethical. I certainly don't do it with people in the clinic. It's too much, too fast. So be kind, small, slow, steady.
Does journaling have a place?
Oh, and I talked about this morning. It does. I have to be really careful how, but it has a place, and I think it can be really beneficial. Where I struggle with it is when it then becomes a chore. So I always say to people, if it's the beginning of your noticing journey, I don't find journaling that helpful, because actually for a lot of my patients, and I'm just going with what I observe in my everyday practice, it can become a stressor if they haven't done it or they haven't planned enough. And sometimes people are just about holding it together to get through the day. Actually making the time to write down your plan and what you're noticing can be hard. So I kind of just say, treat it with caution, make sure it's an adjunct to your day and what you're doing, and then just watch out that it doesn't become a stressor. So if your relationship with your journal, especially some of the ones that have more of a guide, if that is becoming stressful, like even I'll say a guide for that would be, you see the journal, if it's a physical one or and you immediately kind of go, oh God, you're having that, I haven't done it thoughts, warning that it's becoming more of a stressor. So just revise your relationship with it. That's what I will say. But they can be super useful, but I just think it's the when and how that's really important to be aware of, if that's all right to say.
No, it's good. It's good to understand, because I like journaling, but I don't do it every day. I used to do it every day, and
that's the
I know when I need to.
Yes,
and I just do it, and it will just literally be a blank piece of paper and a pen.
Dates, it's instinctive.
Where am I in the world? And then I'll just write.
So you've kind of
So it's more of a cathartic download.
absolutely.
And I know when I was over in South Africa, I'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning with like cycles of thoughts and memories and visuals and stuff like that. And I'd be wide awake and I'd be thinking, so what am I going to do now? And it would just be me. I'd be all right, paper and
Brilliant.
pen next to the bed. And I just used to write. And I remember some of them start with, I've got no idea why I'm awake. I've got no idea what I'm going to write, but I'm just going to write
I think
something. And I would
that's
just
so
write.
healthy. We talk about that for sleep. Sometimes when people wake up in the night, you do, because we always say about thoughts. Thoughts aren't facts is something I'll bring in today. We always think that if a thought's come, well, that must be true. There are thoughts that we don't need to pay attention to at 2 a.m, but there might be ones we have to pay attention to. So it might be, oh my gosh, I moved house. So I've just realised I haven't informed the DVLA. I was like, oh, I've got to do that. Right, I've got to do all these things. So I woke up the first morning in my new house going, I've got to do it all now. I didn't have to do it 2 a.m. It was literally 2 a.m. going, I haven't told the DVLA I've moved house and I haven't told this. And I was like, it's been like 9 hours since you left your last house. It's okay, right? So what I did do is write them down because I didn't want to. I suddenly thought, well, I've got all these things that I don't think I'd already had in the moving house list. Good. But there are other things, like I think that talk I did the other week, those students hated it. Oh, I'm not sure if that BBC interview went well. They're not going to invite it back. I don't need to pay attention to that. And also, how factual is that, right? That's my threat brain talking. So it's learning about what you kind of relationship with thoughts. And we always say to people, write stuff down, especially at 2 a.m. That's like the golden hour, isn't it? Okay. And then also the thing about writing it down is then you're able to look at trends and patterns and go, that shows up a lot. These group, and then you might be able to group your thoughts. So into kind of what we call deeper level, like assumptions. There are a lot of thoughts about how well I do in this area. A lot of thoughts about my relationship. Wow, there's a lot of thoughts about things I've forgotten to do. So is that something about where I'm at? Is that my memory? What is that? So that's where we get good to what we call in psychology, data. It's stuff we can use. These are patterns and trends. What do I need to do with this? Rather than I have to respond to it or that they're facts. Because most of the time it's threat brain going, we think we're going to keep you alive if we send you this really important nugget of information at 2:04 in the morning, and quite often it's not, is it? It's not life or death. It's not saber-toothed tiger walking down the corridor to the bedroom, but to our threat brain it's no different, that thought. And I always say that to people I work with, your brain doesn't see that any different. There could be a saber-toothed tiger coming, fight or flight mode, versus, oh my gosh, I haven't told the DVLA that I moved house 9 hours ago. It's the same thing. So once you're able to we add a little bit of humor to create separation between what we are experiencing and how we respond. Humor is really evidence-based. So if you can kind of go, oh my gosh, there's my DVLA thought, it immediately reduces a bit out of threat mode. Then you get that better functioning at the front of the brain, which is all our decision making, to go, don't need to do anything about that now, but I will write it down. And then tomorrow I can put it on my list of people to call and inform. Does that make sense? And then you can also go, actually, do I need to do anything with that BBC thought? I don't. And that can just go. That's my threat brain worrying about something that might happen in the future. So just changing your relationship with your thoughts, really. Being kind. We have millions of them, don't we? And we can't respond
Absolutely.
to all of them. We can't
Humor's
turn
a
them
big
off.
thing, isn't it?
Humor's values act as a huge humor-based therapy. So I get people to say their worrying thoughts in silly voices. I get them to sing them. And these are all really well-known techniques. They're in the book. So, if you can say a really stressful thought in a Yoda voice, or if you do Gru from Despicable Me works fantastic. It just creates a bit of daylight, or in other words, time. So I've noticed this thought. My immediate response is to go and do this. We basically want you to pause. So by saying it in a silly voice, adding a bit of humour, you're able to go, hang on a minute. This is just a thought. It's essentially a load of words in a sentence that I've gone, oh, that must be true. It isn't. It's just something that my brain's going, we think you need this. And the more daylight you can create, the more time you've got to go, hang on a minute. Do I need to pay attention to this? Is that really what I think? And eventually it becomes more habitual that we can go, oh, because we'll notice the usual suspects. There's the imposter syndrome. Thanks so much for rocking up right now.
Yeah. Or the mum's voice
Oh,
nagging
the
away.
rubbish parent, guilt mum, always there, isn't it? I click sometimes. That's another really good strategy. I go, right, take a seat, guilty mum, because I'm doing this podcast, right? I haven't got time to respond to you right now, so take a seat. So I'm doing what I value. Or I could just say, oh, I'm so sorry, Jonathan, I've just got to deal with this anxious thought for a minute. And I'm not living my life because I'm up here battling thoughts. So we try and get people to kind of go, there you are. Don't ignore the thought, but go, okay, there's a thought about guilty mum, haven't done this, haven't done that, or I messed up that interview of the week on BBC or whatever.
Yeah. Or transferring mum's thoughts onto kids, of like, that, and continual sort of nagging and criticisms and stuff like that.
Inner critic, sometimes I have in this therapy room, so I have 2 chairs because I only see people one-on-one. There's a third, and I use that third to put the inner critic on. I was like, right, we're going to sit them there. So we haven't got rid of them because we can't get rid of them. We can't turn off. That's always the biggest letdown. You can't get rid of negative thoughts. They are automatic. It's like saying to us, don't breathe. We might last so long, but eventually it's a physiological system. So we have to breathe. And thoughts are the same. We can spend money, time, effort trying to stop negative thinking. It's never going to stop. So I'll say, right, let's see what happens between you and me when we pop that inner critic on that chair and just see what we can do even with them there. Let's see whether we can have even just a quick sentence or 2 between us. Could we get you to try a breathing technique? Sometimes that inner critic's really dominant. They're looking at the chair, but it's changing your relationship. It's trying to stop that in the moment, really quick responding. That's the preventative stuff, really. But it takes time. So you've got to support people to go, you put in this time and energy and you'll have a core shift, we call it in psychology, rather than a sticky plaster quick fix.
Yeah, I mean, it takes time, but starting is the key bit, and just maintaining something small. And I think why the book's really useful is because it is really easy to pick up and just go, let me try that, or find a favourite. There's such a range.
And they're so simple.
People can find a favourite.
Sometimes we feel a bit fraudulent after we go, hang on, this is like 40 years between us. These seem so, but that's what we want to try and show. I think people overthink, and I will say that, I'm always a bit risky when I say this. We overthink mental health and what we need to do. Sometimes we have almost like a threat mode over, mental health, it's got to be this glamorous singing, dancing response all the time. It really doesn't. So if we can get people to just go, it's okay to just breathe, as we say. It doesn't have to always be this really glamorous thing. And often.
So that's interesting. So mental health, that phrase.
Yes.
Let's start with that phrase.
Kind of how. So,
what do you think of the phrase? Mental health, well-being.
Such a good question. So where I stand is, there are a lot of people, a lot of psychologists at the moment who are very anti-diagnostic. So we don't use terms like mental health, ill health, mental ill health. We don't diagnose. And there are those that say we must do medical model. I'm in the middle. I go with what the person in front of me finds most useful for their situation. So I could have one person in my clinic who goes, yes, I want to use the word mental health. I see myself as having depression. It's really useful to look it up and go, this is a thing. Oh, other people have it. And I have other people who do not want to use the word diagnostics, who do not want to talk about the word mental health. They'll just go, I'm feeling unwell. I go with them. And to me, I always think it's just such a waste of my oxygen to be getting caught up in battles, because to me, the most important person is the person in front of me. So whatever I'm doing, I will ask them, what's your philosophy? Whether it's an organization, whether it's a charity, whether it's someone in my clinic, how do you see your condition, your presentation, the human condition? Do you want to look up anxiety in a diagnostic manual, for example? Do you want to look up your trauma and see whether it's PTSD? And that's the most important thing, and that's about autonomy. So, and I do this, and I sometimes get in trouble in the media with this, and I will say that with autism. So there are a lot of people who say we shouldn't diagnose, we shouldn't use that term. I've done diagnosis for 26 years now. I ask the person in front of me who's come to see me, and some people want to use the term, some people don't. Some people want to form a diagnosis, some people don't, and that's always my guide. So to me, it's irrelevant what the people are saying or debating. The most important person is the one that I'm working with and what's going to help them manage. So so I will use all of those terms interchangeably depending on who I'm working with.
Depends on the person.
That probably doesn't answer your question. So I'm not.
No, it does answer the question. It's very interesting, actually, because therefore some people like the label.
Absolutely. Yeah, they do.
And other people, and I'm going to put me into this category, is I don't like the label. Yeah. So I've had psychologists overseas and in the UK tell me I have complex PTSD from all the stuff I've done and seen.
From from DSM, here it is, look it up.
And I'm like, okay, great, now what? I don't know. Does it change anything?
What does it mean for you? Is it meaningful?
What does it mean for me?
Absolutely.
So for me, I use it, I think, as a bit of a springboard to say, great, I can visualize certain things like they were yesterday, like many people will be able to. Okay. But I use it to then go, right, how do I now go on and use this to actually then help other people as well as help myself?
Manage things if
I
they
don't,
show up.
yeah. And, it doesn't show up as like it doesn't cause me to not sleep. It doesn't cause me to go and take medication. I take nothing. It doesn't cause any issues day to day. Right. But I just use it. Well, I don't use it. I just inwardly say, right, I'm going to focus on how I can help other people, not
And
get
that's
to
how
that
it should
position. So
be
it
in my
comes back
book.
to prevention again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some people, again, it comes back to, I do use the word chronicity sometimes. So some people might say, I have met a psychologist and I have looked up PTSD, for example. There's another whole debate there now about people overly using the word trauma, but also how we think about trauma has changed, which I think is helpful. So a lot of people used to think you could only say you had trauma if you had been in certain conditions, situations, and actually it's really helped people know, actually that thing I went through really has caused me some issues. But again, it's about what I want to do with that. So if you're someone who's experiencing, what we call re-experiencing symptoms, if you have flashbacks, intrusions, nightmares, and they are impacting on your ability to hold down a job, to have relationships, you might want to look at ways that you can get support with that. And you don't even need a diagnosis for that either. So for me, again, it comes to, you're absolutely right, it's the person in front of you that you're working with as a clinician, or the group or the organization. What's your culture? How do you see it? I think that's the most dignified and respectful thing that we can do. As a psychologist, you should never ever come from this all-knowing. There should not be dominance. There should be an equal relationship. It should be collaborative. There will be things that I know that I can go, oh, I'm worried about this risk, let's talk about it. Or I'm wondering whether there may be some other stuff here, let's talk about it. But there should still be what I call that seesaw. It should be collaborative. There should be movement. People should never feel that they have to say yes to stuff.
Right. Flexibility and approach.
Absolutely. And informed, being informed. I'll tell people, look, there is a certain branch of psychology and the medical community where there is a book. That's how I put it in real simple terms. It is based on research, but, these are the symptoms and signs in this book that would indicate depression or PTSD, whatever it is. Have a read up about it. Have a read up what people are saying. And I always say because sometimes you can go on social media and get sucked into debates, but they're not necessarily based. I always say, look at the science, look at research, look at all different types of platforms so you can make an informed decision. And that's how it should be. Because quite a lot of people will come through your door, usually self-referred because they're distressed, or an organisation will come to you to do some work with them because they have noticed an issue. The most important thing then is how receptive are they to new information? Because if you're overwhelmed or you're really struggling and I'm saying, blah, 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 there's a book, there's this, you're not going to take that in. So it's giving people the time. I'll send you some stuff to look at. Come back and see me in a few weeks and tell me what you think. And that's how it should be. There's, we don't need to rush to fix stuff. Obviously, if there's risk, that's very different, but that's rare.
Right. Yeah.
It's about informed, and it's autonomy. It comes back to your values, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I would say, like, personal responsibility. I'm responsible for me, myself, my health, mentally.
Yeah.
We have to, and I think this question leads on to signposting. I think within organizations, there's quite a lot of signposting. This is how it feels to me. It's like arriving at Land's End and there's a lovely signpost. You've gone through all your traumas. You get to the signpost. It says, John O'Groats, 1,000 miles. You think, oh, I've now got to go and do that journey on my own. Or I've got New York.
Yeah.
However
that's
many
quite
kilometers.
A good metaphor. I'm going to steal that.
Becomes suddenly exhausting of, all right, I've arrived at the right page on the internal website and it signposts me. You want someone, I don't know if it's me, to go, welcome. Let me hold your hand through this. I'm going to give you this, 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 and this, and have a bit of a human connection rather than ferreting around a million videos to try and work out which one fits for you.
Yeah. Comes down to resources as well. I'm also guessing, if I'm compassionate for organisations, but that's how it should be. It should be, I call it being psychologically held, not in a woo-woo way, but just, it is, again, it's not just about the problem solving. It's not, I've noticed something, I may have gone into the intranet or whatever area on your staff website to look at reaching out for mental health support, for example. That is so much, when you think about your threat brain, right, that is so much information to digest when you already might be anxious, and actually clicking, there's a difference between I'm really noticing that my PTSD is impacting me, right? So I'm going to click on the, let's say, the staff intranet for mental health. Knowing you're going to click on it and actually clicking can be a whole different set of reactions. So sometimes it's a bit like when people book in to see me. I'm pointing there because my door is behind this computer. Actually coming through the door is a whole different. Some people are like, I was okay booking in. I just got to the door and I feel really stressed and anxious, or they come and sit down. So it's being, just it's neuroscience, right? Don't bombard people with loads of information. Is it pictures? Is it words? Sometimes people can't digest information if it's just in an auditory fashion or just in a visual. We need to find the ways that fit everybody, but also having somebody to compassionately hold you and go, right, this is what you need. But I appreciate that in organisations there isn't an infinite kind of set of resources. But I struggle with signposting just as I don't like rote learn, click here, refer here. Because also
tick box, we have a policy. Here's our signpost.
And also, how do you know who you need? So we were just talking about this off camera, aren't you? If you're going for mental health support, there's so many different types of professionals. How do you know what you need, who you need? How do you know who's qualified and regulated and who can offer what? And then what are your resources? Because some of them might not be free. Some of them might not be covered by your work. You may have to do that yourself. So you think of all that information for someone who isn't already experiencing mental ill health. It's a lot. So it may look like we have all this wonderful fancy stuff, but sometimes if it's too much or set out in the wrong way, it's actually detrimental to people.
But it's overwhelming. I know when I looked at stuff, it's like, where do you start?
Yeah.
What do you do? And you end up backing away from it.
Yeah, exactly. Some people don't do it. Or it's shaming. So again, you've got to think about language is it using. And then you do have, you have to cover bases. So you may have that button, if you're risky, click here. And then oh gosh, what's that song? If I click that, what's that going to mean? Who's going to know? Privacy, all of that stuff as well, confidentiality. If I talk to HR, is this going to get back to my manager? And I've certainly had that in organisations where there's no discussion. And I've had to say to my client, ask them where the information goes. When they're meeting with you and writing stuff down, ask them who has access to that. Because people aren't given this information routinely, which I find rather sad. That to me is anything I do with someone when it's about informed consent, I let them know where the notes are stored, where information would go, who I'd share it with. That's all stuff that makes you psychologically safe. So I like the fact that people are recognising more and there is signposting, but it's just, I don't like it if it's a rote learnt tick box exercise.
Yeah.
There it all is, you go find out, to me, it's not safe either, actually.
It's not safe, no. Well, I want this episode to go out. The episodes from the parade room I've generally kept for members, but this one I would like to sort of put out there so that more people can hear these tips, because they're super useful to anyone listening.
I was to say, if there's just that one or two people where it might make the difference between sitting on something and going, do you know what? I'm going to talk to someone, reach out.
Yeah, right. I've had more conversations this week. We've been talking for a while. I'm conscious of that and your time. More conversations this week with, and you mentioned it earlier on, with men who are feeling lonely or just don't seem to have the same sort of support network. And the friends of mine, ladies, are saying, I've got loads of lady friends and I work at keeping that network, and we work at speaking and chatting and meeting up and da-da-da. Men, we just seem to be rubbish at that.
It's a different
and fall
mindset,
into this loneliness thing.
Yeah. And people don't talk. I always say, so I run my community project that I run, predominantly tackles loneliness and isolation. And I don't know how we've managed it. We get 50% men on average coming, which is just fantastic. And one of the things that when I'm talking about loneliness is people don't technically know how to recognise it. So I think that's half the problem. So people tend to think of loneliness as elderly person, physically living alone, distance from human beings. There are so many different types. You can be really happy at work, have lots of connections at work, and be lonely at home. You can be married and in a wonderful, connecting, perfect relationship, but be disconnected from the rest of the world. There's so many kind of subtypes. It's why people don't recognise it. And in men particularly, because we add that to the less likelihood of talking generally about mental health. Things are getting better. You've almost got that perfect storm. And again, when you're talking about people who may then retire from the police or leave, so you've been in a certain culture where, I had that when I left the NHS, you kind of just have commonalities, don't you? You've been through things together. So you may not then know how to bring that across to new friendship groups if you're retired or left for whatever reason or moved, whatever's happened. But also as well is that if you have had a job that's I mean, I have to say that all consuming. So if you're working in the police, you're dealing with really tricky things. You may not have, you're one of the kind of jobs where you may not then have had the time to build up networks outside. So it's thinking about there's so many complex factors. You may not have built up those friendships or been able to maintain them because of the unsociable hours or the demands of the job, whatever. So does that make sense? So it's what relationships have we already got that when we retire, when we leave, we can come back to or fall back on? And if, as a man, those haven't been maintained compared to women as well, it's so complex, isn't it?
It is complex,
but also
yeah.
the shame. There's still a lot of shame of talking about loneliness because it is still associated with, I'm this elderly person living on my own. Nobody, let's name it. Nobody likes me. There's a judgment there. If I'm lonely, it's because it's me, and that's kind of how our threat brain works. So we need to redefine that, especially post-pandemic as well. So in the 5 years since the pandemic, loneliness, well, the World Health Organization classed it as the new epidemic November before last, actually, 23, because people are not talking about it. And it has so much physiological as well as mental health impact. People do not realize, if you Google and look on reputable sites, the physiological outcome of loneliness, it will blow you away how much physical health, ill health can come from being lonely. And we need to be in the physical proximity. We're still Zooming now. It's great because we get to do stuff like this, but we're still very reliant on the digital age. So I know people that work at home will go, oh, I'm fine, because I call them out. I've had 10 Zooms today. We haven't been in physical proximity of a human being. And we do. Our brains change. Physiology changes. Our immune system. So many things can be impacted. So when we're thinking about people leaving the force, retiring, it's not just about who am I connecting with, but it's why is that important for our mental health, for our physical health. And we've got to get talking about it more, removing the shame element. People don't like to say, I haven't got any friends. Who do I reach out to? I run walk and talks in my local community. I absolutely adore doing it, but we see that transformation. People come, their eyes are down because there's still a kind of on here for walk and talk. It's kind of under the breath sometimes. And then to see people just going, this is really lovely, get to meet new people and then go for coffee. And sometimes you do need something like that to just get people over that first hurdle. And that there's no shame in it.
No, absolutely not. It's definitely, it seems to be increasing, the number of people I've spoken to, or maybe it's just, me chatting, but it seems loneliness seems to be increasing, but how to tackle it, people are a bit confused by it or don't know what to do, don't even know what questions to ask people. You've given some good tips. I think just going outside your comfort zone. When you're in the police, you're part of a big organization, you have an identity, you're a family. Within that, you're in a team. You have your team, you're working on your thing, you're solving other problems.
Absolutely.
And then you finish, and you're like, now what do I do? Who am I?
Because your sense of purpose changes, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, the sense of purpose is suddenly different, and it might be, I don't have one. And all my mates that were like mates at work, a big team, is now a handful of people who also have their own life and have all got their own commitments, and you rely on them to do the same as when you were in the organisation, but they're busy.
And sometimes as well, if you get a bit deflated and flat, so after retirement, there's quite a high proportion of people who really struggle. If you haven't built up and you've got things to kind of move on to, or if you've suddenly left an organisation, as you say, it's been kind of in your blood and your bones for many years, if you're then getting kind of deflated, disinterested, you're less likely to kind of reach out and have that motivation. So there's such a complex kind of interface of factors. But also that, if someone says to you, are you a bit lonely? Most people are going to go, no, I'm fine, because there's a shame element. And that's the thing we need to keep saying. I use that word a lot, shame. Shame is a global, guilt tends to be situation specific, is how we see it in psychology. And shame is a global thing. So that kind of shame, that this is me, I haven't built up these networks, or I don't have friends. There's still a lot of stigma with that. And that's what keeps shame going. And people don't like to be vulnerable. Because vulnerability is also equated with being unsafe to threat brain, isn't it? So if we're vulnerable, we feel unsafe.
So we need to take the first step, get out of our comfort zone, reach out to groups that we wouldn't normally speak to, and just make new friends, park the dark humour bit.
How do you make friends in a digital age? Yeah, do you know what's really lovely? So most towns now will have social prescribers attached to GP surgeries Most councils have wellbeing hubs, wellbeing centres now. They're a really good starting point, because social prescribers are the people that can then connect you with what's going on in your community and just kind of help you with that first hurdle. So the social prescribers will also refer to projects like mine. A lot of people are doing walk and talks, and it's just a really lovely way. Again, it's an example of not overthinking stuff. So some people might be like, I don't want to join a quest club, or I don't want anything too bespoke. I just want to connect and get a sense of people, because some people are irritating, right? We don't want to be told, I have to join this club and you've got to sit with these people for the next 2 years. They might be really annoying. So let's be honest. You need to find your fit, and that's okay. So sometimes by doing something more general, you can get a sense of the people that you like. So with something like my walk and talk, I didn't realise the outcome measures we were kind of building is that then they go off for coffee and lunch, and then some of them said, oh, I'm also part of this club, do you want to come and have a go? So it's kind of like a spider web, so it kind of leads to other things, and I think that's really lovely, because then you're autonomous in choosing. It's not, I've got to suddenly go and join all these things. And I will leave you with a little nugget of research, because I keep up to date on a lot of this stuff. I'm a bit of a nerd because of my project. Is when you have men particularly who retire from very kind of all-consuming jobs such as the police, is if they have a spouse who has predominantly been at home, there are more issues there around pressure to go find this life and interest, and actually what can happen is you get the pulling away. Does that make sense? So if you have two people who've both worked and retiring and finding their feet, they have less psychological issues showing up than somebody who suddenly, because what you can get inadvertently from your spouse is, oh, you're on my territory now, or I've built up all these networks, and there's a little bit of that guilt and shame of not doing it. But it can almost kind of cause like decision paralysis, if that makes sense. So if you're able to spot these and be compassionate and know this is what organisations can do when they're preparing people for retirement, is not just the physical, how do you prepare for your pension, how do you do all these forms, it's the, what are you going to do with it? No one looks at that element. I always think that should be part of any programme. How do you psychologically transfer? How do you transition? What can you start to look at? You know, you could do temporary walk and talks for people that leave, couldn't you? To help them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Little stepping stones. So
Absolutely.
there's so much to talk. I could talk a day,
Cool.
but it's just about learning about yourself and your body and your brain and how it responds to the world around you, to then know what you need to put in place. So from everything we've talked about today, it's just allowing people, I would say, to helicopter out and go, what is happening? Just catch that urge to fix. Right, I'm retiring, I better quick. Or we're moving, I better join all the clubs, because quite often what will happen is they won't be the right fit. It's just to be able to go, oh, I'm noticing I'm nervous, I'm apprehensive, I'm noticing I'm a bit lonely, I'm noticing I haven't built anything up. Or I'm apprehensive because I'm stepping outside of something I've known. You know, there's grief and loss there, all sorts of stuff, I imagine, leaving something.
Absolutely. I mean, that could be a whole another series of podcasts.
Absolutely. But I talk about grief and loss a lot, because that's part of transition and making room for that. You might need time to grieve a career you've had before you move on to other stuff. But Threat Brain and everyone else says, right, what are you doing now? What are you doing next?
Yeah.
Where's all the
there's
things?
a bit of unfreezing that's needed, isn't there, first?
Spend time with it. You might need some transition time.
Yeah.
It's okay. That's the pausing
we could
bit.
talk about it, couldn't we? Crikey.
I could talk a week.
It's been so informative, and I'm sure the people listening take away like nugget after nugget to help them out. And listen, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to say that people must find your Adversity Psychologist podcast. It's on your website.
It's on Apple, it's on Spotify. If you just type the Adversity Psychologist into wherever you get your podcasts, it will come up. But also, if you want a quick one, just click. It's on my website, the link as well. So it's on Apple, Spotify.
Which is drtara.co.uk,
yeah? So everything I do is on there.
And the book. Very handy to have in your bag or on your coffee table or wherever, and just think,
it's good to rest your coffee on.
No, not rest your coffee on.
And read little nuggets.
Exactly. Hopefully. Take a little nugget, try one. It might not work the first time, but you got to keep going with these things. And that's what we have to do, is try and do and prevent, because it's better than trying to fix it after it's happened. So
just be kind to yourself. You know, we're human.
Absolutely.
We don't have to do it all at once.
Dr. Tara, thank you very much.
Thank
and to
you.
everyone listening, thank you for listening to us. Yeah, it's been wonderful. Now, for those listening, if today's conversation resonated, then you're not alone. Make the call, ask for help, do something about it. And Dr. Tara, thank you for your insight. We tried to capture 20-something years of experience across multiple
I'll stop
different.
at 20, otherwise people know how old I am. I'm always just going to stop at 20.
Say 20. Absolutely, yeah. Well, to everyone who's listening, thank you very much indeed for listening. Dr. Tara, I'm very, very grateful for your time. And, yeah, until next time, everyone, please do take care.